All right, we're live. We are live. Here we go. Haven't used my vibe board in a while. I've been taking a little break in the business world, not really taking a break, but doing something different. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I'm taking a bit of a risk. It's a major risk, actually. More details of that will be coming in coming weeks, but I'm doing something different in business. And working on that. Have been working on that for several months right now. And so I spent some time with my dad recently, talking to him about some of the changes that I'm making. So the topic of risk came up. Why would you do this? You had something really good going. Why would you change it? You're taking such a risk. You don't know if this new idea or this new thing is going to work. So I had to try to explain to him uh, why it's not such a risk to me. Sure, there is risk. I mean, it's really about the definition of risk. So, um, and none of this is against my dad, especially if you're watching this, Dad, you know that, so I don't need to explain that. But my dad grew up, or my dad's career was in a stable work environment. So he um, he retired with a government pension. He's still collecting that pension to this day, and that's what he worked hard to do, and I commend him for that. And I worked in a Fortune 500 company for 13 years, and then I progressively moved to smaller companies. But I could have had a pension. I was working towards a pension, a 401k, all that kind of stuff, and something about it just I didn't like. That's not for everybody, but for me, I was feeling this itch to move into something that was owned by me. And my transition out of the corporate world into entrepreneurship happened over the course of several years by me kind of dipping my toe in the water, eventually going kind of knee deep or waist deep by working with smaller companies to eventually going all in. Eventually going all in. And throughout that process, what happened was I started to learn more about myself. So, if you're thinking about trying out something new, whether that's a new job position, maybe it's in a different area of expertise, maybe it's just a different company, or maybe you're considering starting a business on your own. These are some things that I want you to think about, things that I did on my own. So, um, let me go back to I think about 2 or 3 years prior to taking the full leap and quitting my job cold turkey. I went through a business planning process for my own business. Like, will this work? Analyzing my new idea. Now, I'm a very analytical person. This is what I do for a living. One of my skills is finance, numbers, business planning, and all that kind of stuff. So I went super detailed with this. But essentially, you build out a business model. And if you're just comparing a new job, you can compare the numbers, right? And that's just side note on that. It's not just about the numbers, right? If you're looking at two jobs, and I've done this because I've had this experience, taking two jobs and I'm going to make, $10,000 more at this job. Let's just call it 5,000. Let's make it a smaller number. Is it worth the risk? What is it besides money? Money and what? Because you're getting into things like quality of life, right? Same thing goes for starting your own business. So here I am doing this business plan, and I was like, hard. This is going to be really, really hard. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I can't do this. It was like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to work hard. Too much risk. What if I fail? All these thoughts creep into your head. So if I'm having a conversation with my dad, this is where his mind is going. It's normal. It's totally normal. Okay. Now, some people are wired differently. Some people are on the other extreme. So we've got the I might fail people over here, and then you've got the um, crazy people who just don't care. I don't know what to call them. I'll just call them crazy. Both of these can be very unhealthy. So there's a part of being a risk seeker, not a risk seeker, but uh, what's the way to put it? But there's part of being adventurous and crazy that's good, right? These are the visionaries. And then there's part of being the person that looks at risk tolerance that's good too. You want to be kind of somewhere in the middle, not necessarily in the middle, but being on the extremes, I don't think is really good for anybody because you're gonna live in scarcity over here. Over here, you might make some really crazy moves and completely screw yourself up. But with me, I would say I was transitioning over to here and trying to find the right spot along this curve. And so I moved into smaller businesses that were more entrepreneurial and growing businesses. And there was some risk there, risk that things like they might not be able to pay me as much as the big corporate. They might not be successful, so I might not be there that long. But my mindset was shifting from, oh, I'm going to be in this job 30 years to let me just think about the next 5 to 10. I think the next 5 to 10 is a more healthier way to look because you're only going to actually make moves now. You're really only going to be able to do something significant in the next 1 to 3 years. That's why when I do business planning with people, we set a long-term 10-year goal, but all of our work comes backwards from that 10-year plan to something that's more relevant. 3 years, 1 year, and ultimately to a 90-day plan that you can work on weekly. Because you can't do a 10-year plan right now. You can't hit a 10-year goal today. And when you go along this path, things change. Then you have to react and respond to your environment. Your environment is not just you, your environment is the economy, your environment is your family. And those things change. So I was making decisions 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was going through this thought process of leaving my corporate job that are different today. Now I have 3 children. Back then I didn't. My risk tolerance was different back then. If I failed, I knew I could come back up. But I didn't even have this mindset back then. I didn't even have this understanding that a 10-year plan really doesn't need to be figured out right now. What you need to do is what am I doing in the next 90 days to work towards that 10-year plan? And that was a huge mindset shift for me. So where I want to go with this is when you should feel like you can actually make that bold move. What are the things that you need to do to be confident in yourself? So here I am 5 years ago. I quit my job. Started business. What I did right was quit my job. What I did wrong was I started the wrong business. And what I ended up starting back then, I actually forget about sometimes. I spent about 30 to 45 days trying to come up with some idea that wasn't the right thing for me because I didn't have the skills. I was trying to step too far outside of the skills that I already have. So you need to understand, what are you great at? What are you great at? If I'm great at something and I've already proven that I've been great at it in the marketplace, in jobs, whatever, I can then step out on my own or in a different company and I can do really well because I have the confidence and I have my skills. I have a proven track record. If I'm going to sell myself to somebody, I've got stuff to back it up from. So I quickly shifted into the world of finance and accounting, specifically for property managers, because that's where I was coming out of. And I had a niche, and I had a skill set, and I had a market. And I was able to grow that very quickly. The truth about what I was doing back then was I was doing the same stuff I was doing in a business. I was just doing it as a contractor. First 1 to 2 years, I had to build a team. I'd already built a team before, but I was just doing it a different way now. I was doing it for my own company. So I learned about all those pitfalls. The things I learned was I already knew what it was like to lose an employee, all that kind of stuff. I knew what it took to train somebody, to delegate tasks, all that stuff. What I had to feel was the pain of all that money is mine. Every expense is mine. I'm now an owner. Are you ready to take the leap of ownership? So if you're thinking about starting your own job, are you really ready for that? You never know until you do it. You never know until you do it. That's the fact of it. You never know until you do it. All your employees' problems come on you. If you're not paying them enough, they're gone. If you're not taking care of them, they're gone. If they don't understand and buy into your vision, they're gone. Or they might not even come. You're selling all day, every day to your employees, to your customers. I had to learn sales. Okay, so the transition that you're making, don't make it that big of a leap. Don't try to jump from a accounting job into an operations job in a completely separate industry. Probably not very smart. If you're bearing all the risk yourself, i.e. your own company. All right, so fast forward to where I am today, 5 years later. I'm in a transition period. I'm giving up some things that I have, some things that are good. So back 5 years ago, that was giving up the salary, giving up the bonus structure, giving up what was somewhat guaranteed. I mean, that stuff's really not guaranteed, but it's pretty stable because it's sitting inside of somebody else's company that's much bigger than me, that's not going to go away in 90 days perhaps. When you're operating by yourself, you're literally, going week by week, can I pay these bills or things are going to crash? It's a whole different ball game. So you got to look at it a little bit differently. But now, as I take that leap, and I wasn't this major big size company that had all this cash flow, but when I decided to take a major change, I got to look at it and say, what am I able to rest on to be confident that this isn't such a major risk? And I go back to the same place. What are my skills? What am I great at? So what I'm doing is still going to be financial related. But it's going to be different this time. It's going to be more focused on what I want to do and people that I want to serve. Very specific. How do I know that? Or what does that mean? I feel like I have a more specific purpose in life. Now, this just didn't come up of some random idea. This is 5 years worth of work on myself. Inside business, inside my personal life, inside my relationship with God, inside understanding my physical body, how I live my life. 5 years. I know what business and stress does to me physically. I know what operating outside of my gifts, my skills, my talents, I know what that does for me. It's not good. Working with clients that I don't buy into or I don't agree with their values doesn't mean they're bad values. They're just not as close to mine as I'd like. All that takes extra effort. So I know all these things. I also have some more business skills now. My sales skills have improved dramatically. My speaking skills have improved dramatically. My teaching skills have improved dramatically. Which gives me what? It gives me confidence. So when I look at the risk scale, if it's, I don't know, whatever, low versus high, I'm really not that far over here because there's also risk to what I was leaving. What is the risk of staying in what I had where I was a little bit irritated? There's a risk of burnout. There's a risk of not giving your best effort because you can't naturally do it. So it shows up in clients not being happy. I saw it. So I now also have the confidence in building from scratch. So there's no longer this idea or thought of, can I do it? Do I have what it takes to do it? I've already done it. It's not a cockiness, it's confidence. See, cocky, I believe, comes from ignorance. Confidence comes from experience. Now, I'm going to close with this. If you work with me, my handwriting is way better than this. The reason it's not so good right now is because I'm doing this on the fly. I've come up with this whole thing on the fly, right? But, and a shout out to my mom who just passed away. I got my writing skills from her. I'm also left-handed, so I'm even set up improperly. I should be set up over here. So how big of a risk are you taking? I've gone through this program called Soul Purpose. I've done it twice now over the last couple of years. And I've done a lot of other things as well. But this has helped me figure out what I'm great at, what I'm called to do, what I believe in, what I stand for. Okay? So when I do this and I figure out who I really am, I can't live in another place. I can't go be something else because I'm always going to be drawn back to what my soul purpose is. This was like, I'm talking 10 different personality assessments inside of this, narrowing it down. Where do you see commonalities? All these different things that I did, and that is just part of it. What are your passions? What do you care about? What drives you? What motivates you to get going? All these things. I probably spent, I would say, 30 to 40 hours over the last 2 years just trying to nail down what this is. So if I talk to somebody that's thinking about doing something like this, taking some type of leap to create their own business, what have you done to this? I don't care if it's this program, but what have you done to learn about yourself, to really know yourself? Has it been anywhere close to that? What do you do daily to take care of yourself, to learn about yourself, to pursue yourself? For me, it's been 5 years worth of 1+ hour per day. I told my dad about this the other day. It blew his freaking mind to understand that I get up at 5 o'clock every morning and spend time with me. And for me, it's not just me, it's me and God. It's my relationship with God. It's spending time meditating and spending time in the Bible, spending time journaling. What happened yesterday? What's happening today? What did I learn? What can I do differently? If you want to do something significant in the world, if you want to do something significant in your life, you better know yourself first. You better know what you're created to do and what you're capable of doing. So for me, we go back to the initial question of, am I taking a risk? I didn't analyze it as hard this time. I put some business models together. I didn't analyze it as hard. And what I realized was that through all my experience being a spreadsheet master, my answers aren't going to come inside of a spreadsheet. The answer comes in taking the leap and knowing who you are and knowing that you have confidence and abilities to achieve something great that might take 5 years or 10 years. How do you do it? One day at a time. So that's your lesson. Think all of that stuff through, then learn how to make daily action to understanding who you really are and what you're on this earth to do. Then it's not that big of a risk.